Hi, I'd like to show you today my latest commissioned painting. This is a seascape. It's a birthday present commissioned to me by a group of friends who want to do something special for the person whose birthday it is. So a few weeks ago, one of them got in touch with the idea of a seascape with big blue skies, crashing waves, and a woman riding a horse off into the distance. So I combined a few different photos that I thought would look good, got some good details, and combined them all together to make this perspective here, and to really give a really vivid expression of the idea that they had in mind. I did a watercolour sketch to sort of just get the ideas and the perspective in, and which they approved, and then they decided that they wanted a big oil painting. So this is 100 by 50 centimetres, a nice panoramic view to get all of those wonderful details in and really transport into that fresh place. Now I did record myself painting it, which I've sped up. Kind of towards the end, I kind of forgot to record myself a couple of bits, but I think you'll enjoy this video of the process of making it, and I will also talk about my paints, and I hope that you enjoy watching it, and I'll take you in for some close-ups as well. So you will have just seen me get the first layer on, and this is called underpainting, or just the first layer. And the aim of the first layer is to just cover the canvas, to give that really for a sort of physical perspective, just getting that layer on, so that when I come to put the oil paint on, it won't sort of go through. It has already been primed 3 times, but it's just good to do a sort of rough layout as well, and just to really make the surface nice, and just to help it bind well to the second oil layer. What I've done practically is just really set out the information. I've done my measurements, I've got my nice straight line for my horizon, I have marked out the places where I want my wave to come up, I've thought about perspective, and I've really sort of blocked in the main colours without getting too bogged down into details at this point. And it's sometimes, I think, the hardest part of a painting, the beginning, just to get the main information on there, because it's that foundation that everything else hangs upon. Now, another thing I'm working on before I make my switch to my beloved oil paints is to add a bit of texture. There are lots of interesting texture pastes and things that you can use, but most of them are water-based. So if you want to have just have some more kind of solid, thicker bits that come up, now is the time to think about it. At least that's how I do it. There is beeswax paste, which you can mix in with oil paint to make it thicker as well, which I could use in the end as well if I feel it needs some more. But that tends to dry very slowly, and I need this painting to be ready in 10 days. So I'm thinking ahead, and I'm thinking that I'd like some sort of sandy texture in my sandy beach over here. So I've got here some coarse pumice gel. So it's this sort of sandy stuff that's sort of really gets that lovely texture, and you kind of mix it in with the paint and sort of scrub it over so you can even feel how scratchy and scrapey that is. So it really gives that feeling of sand, and I don't know if you can see there, but there's this sort of nice rough bit that I've just put on, and a little bit in the surf over here as well, in the places where the waves touch the sand and sort of stir it up, and it has that sort of kind of grindy texture in the movement. So I want to do that, and I also want to put a little bit of texture paste on the tops of these waves. So I've got another one here. This is called extra heavy gel, and what you do It looks a little bit like very thick glue, and what I'm going to do is mix it through into my white paint, and I'm going to make these waves, you know, the sort of top parts, the bits that are the most sort of coming out into the sort of viewer's eyes. I'm going to kind of accentuate them with this gel mixed in with the paint to really kind of get that three-dimensional effect and really give it a sense of depth. Okay, so I'm going to do that now before moving on to the oil layer. So these are my two reference photos for the waves, and as you can see, I've been trying to get the foamy bits of the waves, the really lovely white exciting active bits. I've been really trying to get the sandy texture gel to really kind of pop out of there before I go in with all of the detail in the next layer. So just adding a bit of the thickness to the paint at this stage really helps to lift it out, and it's just really capturing the sort of essential shapes, which I will then go over with more paint and possibly some more thick stuff. I might need to do a little bit of rearranging, but it's captured the general shape of it, and at this point, if I'm going to use the water-based texture gel and pumice stuff, I really need to use that now before it gets the oil paint on it. So that will dry now. I think it looks lovely because it makes sense to have sort of sandy, gritty stuff. It really gives it really more of the, you know, it really captures the flavour of the sea and the movement and the wildness. So it's time to move on to the oil painting stage now. So I've laid my base in acrylic, and now I'm ready to bring out my beloved oil paints. I've selected some beautiful blues and turquoises here to pick up all of the tones that I need. I've also got some silver over here. This one's quite old, this Winsor & Newton, but a little goes a long way. It's really good quality. So is this gold, which I will need for the sand and various touches. Now let's go to this end. I'm about to start on the sky. So here's my reference photo. So this will just be a guide to help me. I want to have a sort of area of focus in the distance in the painting, a sort of white area which I want to be here. So this part here, I'll ignore the mountains and I'll just pop them sort of in that area there. And I want to extend this obviously, and I need to pick out all of these different tones. So to start off with, I've got my titanium white, okay, and then I've got pale violet. Now you might be thinking, blue sky, pale violet, hello, but actually pale violet's very useful for just making it a sort of cooler, more far away look, and sometimes with a touch of grey that can help as well. Now this King's Blue is really, really nice, and that will just capture these sort of really pale tones. And the thing I like about this Michael Harding paint, both these two, is that they're beautifully creamy and very opaque. They really cover across and just blend beautifully into each other. And mixing with other paints, it's helpful as well. So this cobalt blue is slightly more transparent, and it really helps to have a bit of this King's Blue next to it so that I can sort of blend them in together really creamily. Now I've also got cerulean. I've actually got two cerulean blues, you can see here. Now cerulean blue is really good for getting that startlingly blue sky, and it's also going to be very useful for my sea, of course. Now I have found that this Winton cerulean blue is slightly greener, so I've got a little label there to remind myself. So I'm probably going to save this one for the sky and use this one more for the sea. Now obviously ultramarine blue is going to be very useful to me. It's a slightly more purpley tone, and it will be really useful for getting those deep shades there. It will also be useful in the sea, of course, so that would be ultramarine. And over here now I've got this wonderful turquoise. It's called Cobalt Teal, also by Michael Harding. I've got my Caribbean turquoise, which is a bit like the sea equivalent of ultramarine. It's transparent and it does beautiful glazes and really gives that lovely watery effect. Okay, so those are my paints. I will be using a touch of a few others, but I'll start using those first, and I'm going to get the sky started. Hi, so a quick update. I'm about to start the sea and the horizon here, and I just thought I'd show you some lovely oil paints that I have. So I mentioned this one before, my slightly green cerulean blue hue. So I'm going to use that one now, and also I want to show you this one here. This is a lovely Caribbean turquoise. It's quite dark. It's a lovely transparent colour. So you can see here how it's this lovely deep turquoisey green. So Caribbean turquoise, appropriate, isn't it, for a lovely seascape like this. Another essential turquoise that I've discovered is this. It's one of those really handy ones because it's just really bright, and unlike the Caribbean turquoise, this one is opaque, not transparent, and it's really nice and creamy, very, very thick. I often have to activate it a lot with oil, and it's quite difficult to open. Here we are. But a little goes a long way, like a lot of Michael Harding paints, and I really love this one. It's just brilliant. So I'll need that, especially when I get to this bit over here, which I've brightened up with fluorescent yellow acrylic as my underpainting. This one is really quite thick, as you can see. It's quite an effort to squeeze out. And of course, I'm going to need some more ultramarine blue. That will help me pick out these lovely deep blue bits here. I'm going to sort this bit out in a minute. I know it looks a bit funny at the moment. I'm hoping it will all just link up and look good. And I think while I'm at it, I'll put in a bit more cobalt blue. It's important to have a good palette. Thinking about your palette is part of the skill involved. Picking out all of these different colours and knowing the way to mix them and which ones work well with other ones. It's quite part of the job, really. It's not just having good dexterity, it's about seeing. Now I'm afraid I've got a confession to make. I did not film myself painting the horse. As you might expect, it was extremely difficult and I had to use very small, tiny brushes, and every millimetre was important to get exactly right, because you know how horses can end up looking if you don't get it quite right. So, just a bit of background. The person whose birthday it is who received this painting, she's a keen horse rider, grew up with horses, and I think that's why her friends wanted to have this picture of, you know, of her, I guess, riding off into the distance, having a great time, feeling free, feeling fresh, feeling, you know, complete peace and liberated. I decided to put the shadow of the horse underneath, just to really, you know, make that connection with the scene and the sand and even the hoof prints in the sand. As you can see, also I've painted around the edges with canvases like these. They're called box canvases or deep edge canvases. They're nice and sturdy, and it's important to paint around the edges and continue the picture. Some artists don't do that, but I do, because I feel it gives a sense of, you know, like it's really sort of stretching the imagination and really helping to really, you know, letting the viewer really enter into the scene. So that is the horse. Here's the wave. Now I put some very thick paint on it. Remember the very thick paint? So that isn't actually dry yet, and I actually have to warn the people picking it up that it's not dry, especially the white places. But after a few days it will become less tacky and it'll be fine. So here's my horse rider, and I used like a sort of sponge thing to get the idea of spray coming off the waves. You see that bit there in the distance, really to get that freshness and that energetic feeling, like you're really there at the beach. So here we are. Okay, so this is Madeleine Pires at M Faith Art. If you'd like something similar, if you have a dream, if you have an idea to make somebody's day brighter or something special for a birthday or an occasion, please do get in touch.